All right, guys, welcome to the first in a series of podcasts that we'll be doing. And this one is still in need of a name, still trying to figure it out. I initially started this with a blog, and my last name is Buckman, so I entitled it Buckman's Blog. But in doing so, I thought, you know what, it would be fun to also incorporate a podcast into it as well. So I can't call podcast Buckman's Blog, so I'm looking for a name for the podcast. Uh, One of the things that I was trying to incorporate was the fact that when people ask, what is your favorite season? Everybody has a favorite that they chase. Mine, it's a toss up. I love chasing big whitetails with the bow, but there is something about chasing turkeys too that it's just so hard. I'm glad you can't do them both at the same time, so I don't have to choose. But that leads me to the answer when that question is asked, what is your favorite season? My answer is typically now, whatever it is. If it's deer season, then that's what I'm all in on. If it's turkey season, that's where I'm at. If it's the striper run, that's where we're at. If crabs are running, that's where it is. Shed season, that's what it is. It's just so many different things that the outdoor offers that we love doing, and depending on what time of the year it is, the answer to that question is what I can do then. So I was trying to think of a way to incorporate that in the name. So any help, leave a comment, shoot us an email, looking for ideas on a name. So any help would be greatly appreciated. And if you come up with a name and we pick your name, we'll figure something out to do as a giveaway with Network Outdoors. So this is going to be, like I said, another podcast episode through Network Outdoors. And this is going to be one where I kind of just go over what I've learned by countless mistakes, and hopefully in the process it helps somebody else. Maybe they won't make the mistake I made, or maybe they'll learn from the mistake I made and do something different. Or in hearing one of the stories that we share, you can relate to it, or it's similar to something you're dealing with or going through, and it helps you make a strategic move that makes you be successful in whatever it is the venture is we're talking about. So this is going to be a wide range. It's going to go from fishing, hunting, trapping. It'll be all kinds of things related around what we do, depending on the time of the season. So I hope that everybody enjoys and gets something to take away from this. It's ideally it's going to be kept relatively short. We're hoping to keep it to 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. And what we're looking to do is just help out whoever we can on the backs of the mistakes that I've made and learned from along the way. This being the first episode, I kind of wanted just to give a brief rundown on how I got started in the outdoors and what's fueled the passion that I have that has turned into an obsession. And I'm very fortunate to have been raised in a household with hunting. As far back as I can remember, my dad took me hunting. He introduced me to the outdoors in squirrel hunting, small game hunting, squirrel, rabbit. And squirrel hunting was one of the things that I think probably my most fondest memory hunting with my dad. I was young, had a single shot 20 gauge, and I will remember it forever like it was yesterday, killing my first squirrel. Dad, we're here in Delaware where we lived. I grew up in Delaware. Most of the hunting that we did was in Delaware when I was younger. And in Delaware, you're not allowed to use a 22 unless you go south of a certain line. The C&D Canal runs through Delaware. And if you're south of that, you're able to use a 22. If you're north of that, you have to use a shotgun. So where we were hunting, I had to use a shotgun. And had my single shot 20 gauge. And I was at the point where Dad and I, we would usually sit together, and we'd find a tree, we'd sit down and wait for things to happen, and Dad would shoot the squirrels. But now that I would have my own gun, I remember going into the woods, and we set up under a big oak, and Dad was like, okay, well, you stay here, and I'm gonna go down here to this next oaks, and I'll sit here. He's like, so you see what you see, and hopefully you can get a squirrel. And being young, yeah, sitting still for any length of time was not the easiest thing to do. So I didn't sit still very long, but I got up and I started sneaking through the woods and see a squirrel. It's probably 50, 60 yards out, and it's feeding, running up and down trees, getting its nut, eating them, running to the next one. Just no clue I'm there. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll go into full, you know, all in. I'm gonna go get this squirrel. So I start stalking the squirrel, and you sneak through when he's not looking. You move a couple steps, and he would go and just mill around, and he could cover way more ground faster than I could. And he kept getting away a little bit further, and I just kept following, kept following. Finally, I closed the gap and got within about 30 yards or so of the squirrel, and he saw me at that point, and I couldn't get a shot because the ground cover was really thick, and I wasn't very tall, so I couldn't see over top of it. But the squirrel ran up in a tree, and there was a V in the tree at about perfect level height with me. So probably 5 foot up in the tree, there was a V, and he went to that V and he just stopped and sit there just long enough for me to cock the hammer on the single shot 20 gauge and put the bead on him and squeeze off. And when I did, he immediately fell right out of the tree. And I am hooting and hollering and just all full of it, just overjoyed. And my dad was close enough to hear me, and he's wondering what's going on. I'm not sure what he could hear. I just know he heard me making a ruckus, so he comes running over. What's wrong? What's wrong? Of course, nothing was wrong. I told him that I just shot a squirrel, and he let me go back and go through the whole entire relive the whole steps. Like, this is where I was, and I saw him over here, and then I snuck to here, and he went to there, and then I got to here, and he ran up the tree there, and that's where I shot him. And he's like, all right, well, let's go get him. So we walked over, and sure enough, he's laying there, and that was my first squirrel. And that's something that it's a memory that is forever with me. My dad, being a father now of 3, and my youngest son is 11, and we do a lot of hunting together. And my dad allowing me to go back through and relive the stalk of this squirrel with him was something that I'll never ever forget. And it was just a squirrel, but that being my first squirrel, and being able to go through that and just have him be just as excited as I was to kill a squirrel. And he's killed, at that point, who knows how many. But he made a big deal out of it, and that hunt is one that absolutely, without a doubt, is my fondest memory of hunting with my dad. And that is something that started me down a path of just being absolutely obsessed with it. I then became absolutely hooked on squirrel hunting, and being the dad that he was, he took me out a lot. So we went squirrel hunting a ton, and I got pretty good at chasing down and killing squirrels. We have a shed in the backyard, and inside the shed, at one point, I had about the whole wall covered with squirrel skins. Come home, skin them. He showed me how to tan them. So I would skin them out, tan them, pin them up, stretch them, and then put them on the wall. And I had almost all 4 walls covered in squirrel hides by the time the years went by. And that's something that it'll just stick with me forever. I'll never ever forget it. And that is what started the journey. From there, one thing led to the next. My first job, we had a local sporting goods store in the neighborhood, and it was the place that all the hunters went to get whatever they needed for their hunting, whether it was waterfowl, deer hunting, or fishing. And it was a place that I frequented often. I could ride my bike through the development, cut through, cross a creek, and I could get there without crossing only one major road we had to cross. So as a kid, I was able to ride my bike there, go get my worms, my hooks, my whatever I needed for fishing. Me and a couple buddies, we did that for years. And that was a place that when you would go to, the owner was amazing, Kurt Slicer, a guy that I'm forever in debt for teaching me a ton about one, being an entrepreneur, and two, the outdoors. He let me sit in that store and just talk to customers that would come in and, ask question after question after question of both him and the customers that would come in. Kurt was a big duck hunter, big waterfowl hunter and trapper. So that was something that I had a lot of questions about and asked a ton of questions of. And he was always gracious enough to entertain and answer and tell me stories about, when he was young, how he learned this and how he learned that. And I soaked it all up as much as I absolutely could. And being there in that store, other people would come in and, they would be guys that would trap, or Kurt knew that did things that I had questions on. He was like, oh, well, you should talk to, so-and-so. And, if they would be there, they would come in, I would talk to them, and, I'd ask them questions. And, they would be gracious enough to let me tag along with some things that they would do. And they would also entertain me and allow me to ask a lot of questions. I've always had the brain that wanted to know the why. It was never good enough just to say because. So I asked always, oh, well, why did you do it this way? Or how come you did this one this way and the other one you did that way? And they were always gracious enough to explain to me, well, on this set, we couldn't put it the way we did on this one because whatever the various reasons were that would dictate the change or the need for slight adjustments. And, in doing that and being able to be taught firsthand on a lot of things to do with whether it was hunting or trapping, I became just absolutely obsessed with it. Got a couple Conibear 110s and a couple footholds, and would go try to find muskrats close enough to ride from the house. There wasn't too many places there, but there was a creek down the road that had rats. So I figured, well, I can't eat them, and they probably venture up into people's houses, so I'll see if I can catch them. And I got pretty good at catching creek rats in Conibear 110s before I ever started actually getting to a place where I could catch muskrat. But it was a ton of fun, growing up doing those types of things. And once I got old enough to have a job, Kurt offered me a job. He's like, hey, I could use an extra hand here. Would you like to work at the sporting goods store? And, absolutely. That was a dream come true for me. So for quite a few years, I worked there. It was a sporting goods store and an RV store and truck accessories. So we sold truck caps, put on hitches, and truck accessories, and a full sporting goods store. And back then it was when you checked in deer in person. So we were also a deer check-in station. And that was one of my most favorite times of the year. Gun season, deer season roll around, and opening day of shotgun. I hunted in the morning, but then I would come in to work and help with the check-in process because it was usually an all-day event. Guys would show up, all day long, and anybody that killed a deer, they always wanted to tell their story. And Kurt, being the guy that he was gracious enough to allow me to get paid mostly just to sit around and talk hunting during that time frame. So I absolutely capitalized on that. I took the time to hear all the stories and get the scenarios on what happened and where they were hunting, what the climate was like, what the temperature was, which way the wind was, which way the deer came in. And guys were telling, and girls telling stories, about their harvest of this deer or that deer. And those days, it just, the excitement that it created and how much I looked forward to it, it was amazing. And growing up that way, being able to be taught from so many different people that were both willing to share what they knew and learned, it got me to a place where I was, I think, 19 when I realized that, like, man, I do a lot of things based upon what I learned, and I tried doing my own things, but have already been taught something from somebody else and retaining it, I don't know that I had a leg up. I think that a lot of the guys that I learned a lot from were trappers, and to be successful at trapping, I feel like you have to be a very good outdoorsman. There's just so many things that go into trapping. You're not there when you catch the animal, so you have to understand, where they're moving, when they're moving, why they're moving, and set up a trap in between point A and point B that this animal's going to walk through. If it's a foothold, they're literally stepping right where you have this foothold. And to be able to do that, I mean, you can create bait scenarios and get them in there, but even so, doing that, it takes a certain type of skill and dedication to be able to do that and do it successfully. And some of the guys that I learned from were, I mean, they were amazing. These guys are legends in the game, if you would. They didn't seek nor want any popularity for it. They did it because a lot of them did it to make a living, and others did it just because they had the same passion for it. They just absolutely loved being in the outdoors and being a part of what it was. So a lot of the things that I learned in relation to hunting came on the back of being taught from guys that were just hands down knockout trappers. And the attention to detail that they have to take and then understand what's happening, put a process in place, put things together, and then to be successful. So taking that into the deer woods, it I don't want to say it made it easy, because I don't think it's ever easy, but I was able to be successful very early because of that. And upon success grows confidence, and with confidence, I think, grows a little bit more success. So probably being successful at a younger age, definitely helped fuel that fire, if you will. And the one thing that led me to do was try to help others that are getting into the sport be successful early in their venture. I don't know. My dad, he hunted for, I think he told me 6 years before he killed a deer, before he ever even had a chance at a deer. Now he taught himself. He didn't have somebody bringing him up. Nobody in his family hunted, so he just kind of learned as he went. But to go 6 years without killing a deer, I mean, that takes dedication. And I can say that I was very fortunate. I never had to go that long. I killed a deer very, very young in my hunting career, and it has been very successful ever since then. And I know that success breeds confidence, and the one thing that I want to be able to do through this podcast, Network Outdoors, and other things that I've done along the way is to help people that are, whether they're new to it or they're they've been doing it for years, but they just don't have a mentor or somebody to be able to help them be successful. That's my main objective. That's my main goal, is to help people be successful early in the venture, whether it's trapping, hunting, fishing, whatever it may be that's outdoor related. I feel like if given the right opportunity and shown in the right manner, anybody that puts in the time can be successful at these things. Now, whether or not it's killing a big buck, that's a whole nother level. But to be just successful at deer hunting, and success is in the eye of the beholder. I killed a ton of small bucks before I got to the point where I started targeting a certain age class buck. But just to simply be successful, and that again is in the eye of the beholder. There's plenty of people that are out there that would just be tickled to death to be able to consistently go out and put meat in the freezer, whether that's killing a doe or a legal buck, what have you. It's not. There's no definition of success that is clear cut. Again, I think that's something that was lost along the way in this industry, where the inches is what is a huge factor in deer hunting. Well, how big was it? Or I'd have let that one go another year. Or saying those types of things, whether or not that's your personal preference or not, that's absolutely fine, to each their own. But not knowing the backstory and what was put in to be able to achieve that success that they did achieve, to say something that's anything but positive is just, it's demoralizing. It's not the approach that I feel like we should take as hunters or fishermen or trappers. It doesn't matter, whatever that is. If somebody was successful and they're happy with what they did and their outcome and the animal that they harvested or the fish they caught, then who are we not to be just as happy for them? Even if it's a property that borders yours and it's a 2.5 or a 3.5-year-old deer that you passed a dozen times and the neighboring property shot it, be happy for them. It's not a competition. We're all out here to enjoy what we love doing, and let it just be that. It's just that simple. So I hope that in time the bashing and the social media aspect of things has definitely taken a turn where it's hunters against hunters. You see on a lot of pages and posts where somebody says this, or what will this deer score, or how big was this one, or it's just I think we lost the overall core values and why it was that we did what we did whenever it was when we started. And that's something that I want to be able to get back. And if I can be a little part of that for somebody, then I consider that a win. I think it's a huge success. Over the years, I've been very fortunate to have some very good properties to hunt, and in having those properties, I was able to take people out and introduce them to the sport and be there for whether it was their first buck, their biggest buck, their first deer ever, their first waterfowl hunt, we were killing their first duck, their first goose, their first mallard, whatever it was. I've been very fortunate to be able to be a part of that for a lot of people. And in doing that, you realize that there is only one first. There's ever a first time, only one time. And to be able to be there and share that experience with people that killed their first deer, shot their first duck, caught their first whatever type of fish it was we were targeting, or even maybe their first fish. There's been those. That experience is something that I want to replicate as many times as I possibly can throughout the course of my life. That is something that just the sheer excitement and bliss and the roller coaster of emotions that come with what transpires when somebody's successful in doing something that they've been working hard at doing, and then to be a part of that success and to be there and experience it firsthand, there's really no substitute for it. And that's something that ultimately I hope to be able to do and continue to do for as long as I can do it. And having a son now, being there for his first deer, his first buck, his biggest buck, I get excited when I kill deer. There's no two ways about it. And when you lose that, that's when you quit hunting. But when he shot his first deer, he was 4 years old. He shot it with a crossbow. I was shaking more than, and it was a doe. His first one was a doe, and I could hear my heart in my ears as the deer is approaching. And I mean, at this point, I've killed a lot of deer, and I got more excited for that than I did for my biggest buck that I killed. And that's when I realized that, this is something that this is what my passion is. This is what I love doing. I love being able to help people to be successful in what I enjoy doing so much. And that's something that trying to figure out a way to make that happen, to make that be on a larger scale is what this podcast and Network Outdoors is all about. So I hope that through the course of this series that we're able to bring some value, give some laughs, and hopefully educate some people in various different things that we're going to talk about. And if anybody has anything that you would like to hear or be asking questions about that I can give what I know in regards to what it is, then I'd be happy to hear from you. And hopefully we can shed some light on a situation you're having. There is a ton of things that I know I want to talk about. I have a huge list of things, and I'll put them down here, and you guys can take a look at them. I'll share a link to it on what the thoughts are and what the things we're gonna hit on and talk about as we go, and they'll be relevant to the seasons that are happening around me. I'm in Maryland, so on the Eastern Shore, as things go, that's what the things will be referencing. So right now we're wrapping up deer season, so we're going to be talking about the post, the end of deer season, post season, and then we'll talk about shed hunting. That's a huge passion of mine. I absolutely obsessed with shed hunting. I probably shed hunt more than I deer hunt even. And then from there we roll right into scouting for turkey. I have trapping mixed in, And then we have trout season that comes up. Fortunately, we're in an area where trout are stocked. But we do an event for the kids with Network Outdoors. Last year was the first one. This will be our second one. And we take them out. We have a youth day here in Delaware. And I make my own trout bait, and it is pretty much guaranteed that we're going to catch fish. And the kids have an absolute blast. So that was a ton of fun. We have some videos and stuff like that on the YouTube channel. You can check out if you want to see any of that. And we'll be recording again this year doing that. And then from there, it'll move from trout. We'll have rockfish that'll be rolling in. We're on the Eastern Shore here, so stripers are a lot of fun to catch. And then after that, it starts warming up a little bit, and then the snakeheads roll in. And here we have a huge amount of snakeheads. And, you know, depending on where you're from and where you're watching, they're pretty prevalent here on the Eastern Shore. Not so much in the inshore and inner Midwest or out west, but they are a fish that are an absolute blast to catch. Super aggressive, a lot of topwater action. I mean, they explode on rubber frogs in the topwater, and then they're absolutely great table fare. One of my favorite fish to eat. Quickly becoming my favorite fish. They might even be my favorite freshwater fish to eat at this point. But from there, we'll roll into turkey season, and then throughout that whole duration, my focus on whitetails never stops. I run cameras 365 days a year, always scouting, trying to set up for the next year, and be able to have places where when people approach that want to get into this and want to try this, I have a place that I can take them that I hope that, you know, they can be successful. So that's the plan with this, and that's what we're looking to do, and excited about what's to come with this, and looking forward to hopefully growing the audience as we go and getting feedback and input. That is strongly encouraged. So please, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you leave a comment with whatever you want to hear or see. If you're following the podcast and you're just listening, then please hit us up on our social media platforms with any questions you have. You can find us on all the platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So be sure to check us out, and I'm definitely looking forward to meeting and getting to know some new people. We do have a couple guests lined up for the podcast, a couple different people that we're going to be speaking with, and we want to do a spinoff on another series of sharing success stories. So that'll be another series that we're going to kick off here, and I love hearing other people's stories of success. Love asking questions about what happened with what they did and how it all went down and how they prepared, and you know, what do they feel like led them to being at that point of having that opportunity and then being successful. And that's something that we're going to kick off as well. So if you have any success stories you want to share, you want to be on the podcast and be on the YouTube with us and share your story, we strongly encourage that. Reach out to us. You can get a hold of us again through all the social media platforms, as well as networkoutdoors.com. You can find us there as well. And we're ever growing there as Network Outdoors, and we have multiple chapters now in various states. We're getting ready to do a new chapter in Texas, and there's going to be a sandhill crane hunt that we're getting ready to do, Ribeye of the Sky. I'm super stoked about that. That's going to be really exciting. So looking forward to that, and getting out there with Austin and getting that chapter up and rolling, and hopefully many more to come as the year goes. Our goal is by the end of the year 2024 here, we're hoping to have over 1,000 members within the organization. So we are just right at around the 200 mark, and we're excited about that for sure. 3 years in the making, reaching this point, and we're looking forward to this year being a banner year. So if you have any questions or inquiries on what Network Outdoors is, you can check out the website, networkoutdoors.com, and then from there, you'll have a bunch of information. And if you ever want to ask any more questions or what have you, feel free to reach out to myself or my partner, Brandon, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And if getting a chapter started in your area is something you'd like to do, let us know, and we will do everything we can do within our powers to support you 100% and get something going in your area. So appreciate everybody joining in and listening. Like I said, the goal is to keep these between 20 and 30 minutes. This one's probably a little bit longer just for the fact that it's the first one, and kind of going over and just giving a little bit of background and history of, about me, what I'm doing and where I came from, and why I am doing what I'm doing today. So Again, appreciate everybody joining and listening, and God bless.